Prince Harry has just lost the plot. I know a lot of you will think that happened a long time ago, but this is the height of insanity.
Picture this for a moment before getting caught up in all the headlines, because the human side of this story matters far more than any single news report. Imagine a wounded veteran who lost a limb, their eyesight, or their hearing while serving their country. They decide to compete in the Invictus Games because one person spent years telling them again and again that this mission was deeply personal and one of the most important commitments of his life. Now imagine that same veteran watching the weeks leading up to the one-year countdown for Birmingham 2027.
Prince William has stepped over Prince Harry, over the royal rota, and he's doing it as he wants to. He's doing media on his terms.
Instead of seeing the focus stay on the athletes, they are met with headline after headline about security discussions, motorcades, and endless questions over whether Meghan will travel to the UK. It's understandable why some people might begin asking whether the man who inspired them is still giving the same level of attention to the cause that once meant so much to him. That question sits right at the centre of everything being discussed this month. Beneath the competing reports, different opinions, and constant media coverage, that's the emotional issue many people believe deserves attention. Before jumping to conclusions, though, it's worth looking at the facts carefully, one step at a time. So let's begin with the document that sparked much of this latest conversation, because the details are far more important than the simplified version many people saw in the headlines. According to multiple reports published last month, a confidential security assessment was submitted to RAVEC, the UK government committee responsible for reviewing and deciding requests for protective security for individuals who no longer automatically receive state-funded protection. The contents of that reported assessment quickly became a major topic of discussion and added even more attention to an already closely watched situation. The document, reportedly around 40 pages long, was said to have been prepared by a private security firm based in Los Angeles. Here's the detail that many early headlines did not fully explain. According to multiple reports, the assessment was commissioned and paid for by Prince Harry himself. Reports say he hired the private firm, reportedly at a substantial cost, to produce a detailed review of the security risks he believes he faces. According to those reports, the document outlined several alleged threats in significant detail. It reportedly included claims about possible plots said to have connections to Britain, references to an Al-Qaeda document that had reportedly appeared within the wider intelligence picture, and hundreds of reported stalking-related concerns gathered from different sources over a long period. Together, the reported findings painted a picture of ongoing and broad security concerns.
William and Catherine to make sure that he feels, they can bring him along slowly, and involved in the armed forces is a perfect way to do that.
ITV News was the first major outlet to report on the document, and after that, the story spread quickly. Numerous major news organisations picked up the key claims and repeated them as the discussion gained momentum across the media. But that's where another debate started. Some critics argued that much of the reporting focused heavily on the alleged threats, while giving less attention to an important point that the assessment was reportedly produced by a privately hired security company, not as part of an independent UK government investigation. Because of that, many people came away with a simple impression: this is real, this is serious, this is why he needs protection. Critics say there is another side that also deserves consideration. They argue that whenever a private security firm is hired and paid by the same person whose risks it is assessing, its conclusions should be viewed as one piece of evidence rather than the only answer. They say such a report is best considered alongside independent reviews and official assessments before reaching firm conclusions about the overall level of risk. That distinction has become a major part of the wider conversation surrounding the report. According to critics' account of events, the government's response appeared far more limited than many people expected. Reports indicate that RAVEC did not carry out a new reassessment meeting based solely on the privately commissioned report. There was no publicly announced review process or major policy change. Instead, according to those reports, officials continued with the existing security arrangements already in place. Then came the detail that many people say shifted the entire conversation. After the report, the headlines, and weeks of growing attention, the reported response was much simpler than some had anticipated. According to multiple reports, Harry was provided with the contact details of a liaison officer rather than being granted automatic police protection, an official motorcade, or any expanded state security measures. For critics, that single detail speaks volumes. They argue that offering a liaison contact instead of additional protection may reflect how officials assess the situation behind closed doors. Their view is that if authorities had independently concluded there was an immediate need for higher levels of security, established procedures might have led to different decisions. Others, however, interpret the same events differently and caution that the full reasoning behind security decisions is not made public. That difference in interpretation has become one of the biggest points of disagreement in the entire debate.
Archie and Lily will ultimately accompany him. The Royal and VIP Executive Committee, RAVIC, has declined requests for additional protection just days before Harry is scheduled to return to Britain for a series of engagements.
Critics argue the reported response appears to reflect the government's own independent assessment rather than simply adopting the conclusions of the privately commissioned report. One question also gained a lot of attention across social media, with many commenters debating it from every angle. It goes like this. If someone genuinely believes there are serious threats against their family and considers a particular country to present significant safety risks, how does that affect decisions about travelling there with loved ones? Supporters and critics have offered very different answers, making it one of the most talked about aspects of the wider discussion. Many critics argue that the straightforward answer would be no. They believe that if a parent truly thought the level of danger was as serious as described, they would avoid bringing their children into that situation altogether, regardless of what security arrangements were available. That viewpoint has become a major part of the public discussion because Harry has publicly indicated that he hopes his children will be able to visit the UK. Plans for potential visits have also attracted attention well before any travel takes place. Reports have discussed possible dates, locations, the Invictus Games, and even the possibility of spending time with family or visiting Princess Diana's grave. Critics argue that if the level of risk matched the most serious public descriptions, sharing travel plans in advance could appear difficult to square with those concerns. Others note that the public does not know what private security planning may take place behind the scenes. But there's another interpretation that many critics believe deserves consideration. They argue that the long-running disagreement may not be only about personal safety. Instead, they suggest the security dispute could also involve broader questions about official status, recognition, and what level of support someone should receive after stepping away from a formal royal role. From that perspective, the debate extends well beyond security alone. Supporters of that view often point to Harry's recent international travel. In recent years, he has visited countries including Ukraine, Colombia, and Nigeria, all of which have faced documented security challenges of different kinds. Meghan reportedly accompanied him on some of those trips, and reports indicate those visits did not generate the same prolonged public dispute over security arrangements that has surrounded travel to the UK. Critics argue that this contrast raises questions worth discussing. In their view, if personal safety were the only issue driving the debate, they would expect similar levels of concern to arise around travel to other destinations with recognised security risks. Others disagree, noting that every country, event, and security assessment involves its own unique circumstances, making direct comparisons far from straightforward. Others, however, point out that every destination is evaluated through its own detailed security process. They argue that each country presents different risks, different intelligence, and different circumstances. Because of that, they say comparing security arrangements across completely different locations may not always provide a fair or accurate picture of the situation. If you're finding this breakdown more useful than the headline version making the rounds, hit the like button. It helps the channel keep digging into the details instead of stopping at the surface. Now, let's get to one of the most debated parts of this story, because the discussion surrounding the courtroom photograph is where many critics believe things took an unexpected turn. According to critics, some of the biggest questions about the reported assessment didn't come from traditional news coverage at all. Instead, they emerged as people on social media began examining the reported details more closely. instead of relying only on the headlines.
We have members of the royal family, quite clearly. She was just recently outside of the royal box at Wimbledon, going to other places as well, which we may discuss later. Point is, other members of the royal family are willing to take more risks with their lives. They are outside of the royal family. We have this excuse that they can't come to the UK because of the security threat.
One reported section described a woman who had allegedly attended a London courtroom on 2 separate occasions. At first, many readers assumed this referred to someone who posed a genuine security concern. Later, however, online commentators claimed the woman was widely recognised as a public supporter of Harry and Meghan, who had openly attended hearings as an enthusiastic admirer, rather than someone publicly linked to threats or violence. Those claims have been widely discussed online, although the full context surrounding the reported reference has not been publicly verified. For critics, that reported detail changed how they viewed the rest of the document. They argued that if someone viewed by the public as a harmless supporter appeared within the broader discussion of potential concerns, it was reasonable to ask whether other reported examples also deserved closer examination before drawing conclusions. Critics have also pointed to another comparison involving Wimbledon. Around the same period, photographs from the tournament showed Catherine, Princess of Wales, seated among spectators, with no obvious large security presence visible to the public. Security professionals often note that protective teams are frequently designed to remain discreet rather than highly visible, so photographs alone do not reveal the full security operation. Even so, the comparisons sparked plenty of online debate. As one widely shared comment put it, "You would have a hard job spotting any security around Catherine at times." That observation became another talking point for critics discussing the different public perceptions surrounding royal security. Critics point to those Wimbledon images, along with Catherine's continued public appearances following her cancer treatment, as part of their broader argument. They believe those moments suggest that the general public security environment in the UK may not fully match the picture presented in the privately commissioned report discussed earlier. Others strongly disagree with that comparison. They note that security decisions are made using individual threat assessments, not broad national conditions. They also point out that much of any protective operation is intentionally kept out of public view, meaning photographs rarely show the complete picture of how security is actually being managed. Another major discussion has been developing alongside all of this, and it shifts the focus away from Harry alone. Instead, some commentators have questioned whether other influences may also play a role in decisions about travel to the UK and public appearances. Several panel discussions and opinion pieces have focused on Meghan, with commentators offering a wide range of explanations for why she has spent relatively little time in the UK compared with Harry's visits. Some believe the reason is simply personal preference, while others have suggested different possibilities based on their own interpretations of public events. One theory from a royal commentator gained significant attention online. The commentator suggested that Meghan may have little interest in returning to the UK, could be concerned about the public reaction, and may believe the security situation presents too many complications. The same commentator further speculated that these concerns could reinforce Harry's ongoing efforts to seek additional security. However, these claims remain opinions and have not been established as fact. That distinction is important because many people reject that theory completely. Even so, it continues to resurface, because critics believe they see a broader pattern in how public disagreements have unfolded over the years.
All the drip feeding coming out, going to see the grave of Diana, going to Invictus. Meghan might make some public appearances, but probably won't with the children. Where they're going to stay. And then you get the story, well, now they may not come because he's not happy with the security arrangement.
They argue that when tensions appear to be settling, another issue often emerges that brings the discussion back into the spotlight. Supporters, meanwhile, may interpret those same events very differently. Critics have also highlighted the number of staff departures from Archewell over recent years. They note that several former employees publicly said they had accomplished what they originally came to do. While that wording sounds neutral on its face, it has sparked considerable online speculation, with different observers offering very different interpretations of what, if anything, it might actually mean. That phrase has been interpreted in many different ways, and no single explanation has ever been officially confirmed by the people involved. As a result, the speculation has continued, with different observers reaching very different conclusions about what those comments may have meant. Separate from the staff departures, some media reports have also referenced comments from people living in Montecito. According to those reports, a few local residents have described Harry and Meghan as somewhat private or selective about the relationships they build within the community, despite having lived there for several years. Those accounts reflect the views of specific individuals and should not be taken as representing the entire neighbourhood. One story that circulated widely came from a former insider who claimed that Meghan would sometimes look past the person she was speaking with, as if scanning the room for someone else to connect with, even while a conversation was still happening. That account comes from one person's experience and has not been independently verified as a broader pattern of behaviour. Even so, critics have continued to reference that claim when discussing public perceptions of Meghan's approach to networking and social relationships. Some commentators have gone even further, arguing that Harry's public style has also changed over time in similar ways. That, however, remains an opinion rather than an established fact, and others strongly disagree with that assessment. Then, around 2 weeks ago, an entirely different event grabbed people's attention and quickly became part of the wider conversation. Prince William appeared on the New Heights podcast with Jason and Travis Kelce, without the kind of massive build-up that often surrounds royal media appearances. He sat down, answered questions, and came across to many viewers as relaxed, comfortable, and natural throughout the conversation. Supporters praised the appearance as authentic and easy to connect with. Many felt it showed a style that seemed effortless rather than carefully planned, and they highlighted that quality as one of the reasons the interview received such positive reactions online. Critics of Harry argued that the podcast created a noticeable contrast with his own recent public appearances. In their view, William's conversation appeared more spontaneous, while they felt Harry's media efforts have sometimes seemed more structured or carefully managed. Others would likely see those appearances very differently, but that comparison became a popular talking point across social media. Viewers also paid attention to Travis Kelce's introduction of William at the beginning of the episode. Many commented that it felt especially warm and detailed, going beyond a routine welcome from a podcast host. To those viewers, it came across as genuine respect, rather than something staged for the audience.
Is a specific threat, like a terror threat, security will immediately be provided. Because Harry's team keep on trying to say this line, Rafe, and it's not true. This is the problem. They just lie through their teeth. It makes me sick that journalists just swallow it. They keep saying, Taylor Swift gets security when she comes to the UK. No.
Around the same time, actor Eugene Levy was asked in a separate interview whether he had discussed Harry and Meghan during his own conversation with William. His response was brief and direct. "I didn't ask about it. It wasn't of interest. I had better things to talk to him about." That quote quickly spread online and became another widely shared moment in the ongoing public discussion. Supporters of William pointed to Eugene Levy's response as a telling moment. They argued that it suggested conversations around William's day-to-day work often centre on his projects and responsibilities rather than automatically turning to royal family disputes. To them, that reflected the difference between media headlines and the conversations happening behind the scenes. Critics of Harry have drawn a direct comparison. They note that, over the past several years, Harry has spoken publicly about his experiences and disagreements through interviews, documentaries, and his memoir. During that same period, they argue William has concentrated on long-term charitable initiatives and official duties, choosing to keep the focus on the work itself. Supporters also point to Catherine's fundraising efforts as another example. After completing cancer treatment, she took part in the Three Peaks Challenge to raise money for the hospital that cared for her during that difficult time. Supporters praised the way the event was presented, noting that attention remained largely on the fundraising and the cause itself rather than on her personal achievement. William has also appeared in several radio interviews, podcasts, and public discussions in recent months. Supporters see those appearances as opportunities to connect with people in a natural way, while highlighting charitable work and community initiatives. Critics of Harry, meanwhile, argue that much of his recent public attention has continued to revolve around the long-running disagreements over security and official status. Others, however, would likely view his public comments as efforts to explain his perspective on issues that remain important to him. Supporters of William believe he consciously chose a different public approach after witnessing the intense media attention surrounding his mother, Princess Diana. They argue he is focused on consistency, long-term service, and keeping personal matters separate from his official role. Critics of Harry, by contrast, argue that he has too often linked his mother's legacy to his present-day disagreements with the royal institution. Supporters of Harry, however, may strongly reject that characterization and see those references as part of explaining his own life experiences. Many observers also argue that an important part of the story gets overlooked when attention stays focused only on the personal drama. They point out that several separate institutions have reportedly arrived at broadly similar positions on the security question, each through its own decision-making process, rather than through any publicly demonstrated coordinated effort. Critics highlight not only the UK government's decisions, but also the palace's public position and the absence of any publicly announced escalation by the relevant oversight bodies. They also note that senior working royals have not publicly intervened in the dispute. At the same time, Buckingham Palace has consistently stated that decisions regarding protective security are matters for the UK Home Office and the appropriate government authorities, reinforcing that those determinations are made independently of the royal family itself. William and Catherine have not publicly commented on this specific dispute at any stage. Instead, they have remained silent as the story has continued to develop. Some observers interpret King Charles's silence as a sign that he could have chosen to become involved, but decided not to. Others see that conclusion very differently. Many also point out that government security decisions operate separately from the personal wishes of the monarch. Under the current system, decisions about protective security are handled by the appropriate government authorities, not by the king acting on personal preference. Because of that, supporters of this view argue it would be inaccurate to assume that silence from the palace reflects control over the outcome. Critics argue that another detail deserves closer attention. They point out that several different institutions have reportedly reached broadly similar conclusions while operating independently of one another. In their view, when separate bodies assess the same issue and arrive at comparable positions, that pattern is worth examining rather than dismissing as simple coincidence. According to that interpretation, the decisions reflect how the available evidence was assessed through established processes rather than pointing to any coordinated effort against Harry. Critics argue there is little public evidence that the various organisations involved acted together with a shared objective. Looking at the bigger picture, some critics believe the disagreement has never been only about physical security. Instead, they argue it has evolved into a much broader debate over official status, recognition, and what level of support should continue after someone formally steps away from a senior institutional role. From that perspective, leaving the working royal family meant leaving behind not only official duties, but also the state-backed privileges and security arrangements connected to those responsibilities. Critics who hold this view believe the long-running dispute reflects an unresolved disagreement about where those boundaries should now be drawn. Others reject that interpretation entirely. They maintain that Harry's concerns about safety have remained genuine and consistent throughout the entire dispute, regardless of the conclusions reached by the government or the public debate surrounding those decisions. From their perspective, the security issue should be viewed on its own merits, rather than as part of a wider disagreement over status. Wherever someone lands after looking at all of these arguments, one thing is clear: the conversation is far from over. New developments continue to generate fresh debate, and many questions remain unanswered as different interpretations compete for attention. Among the issues still being discussed are reports surrounding a possible visit connected to Princess Diana's grave, and what such a visit, if it happens, could involve. Until more verified information becomes available, those discussions remain the subject of ongoing public speculation, ensuring that this story is likely to remain in the headlines for some time yet. There are also bigger questions about what comes next. Some observers are wondering what future Sussex-related projects could mean from a commercial standpoint, including what companies like Netflix may expect from any new collaborations as this story continues to evolve. Beyond that, many people are watching the bigger picture. What happens if the distance between Harry and the rest of the royal family continues to grow over the next few years, instead of gradually narrowing? Could the relationship eventually improve, or is this long-running chapter likely to continue shaping headlines for years to come? Those questions remain unanswered, and opinions vary widely. So, what's your view? Do you think the difference between the privately commissioned 40-page security report and the government's reported decision to provide a liaison officer instead of additional state-funded protection reveals something meaningful about how officials assess the situation? Or do you believe there's another reasonable explanation that fits the available facts just as well without assuming bad intentions from anyone involved? I'd really like to hear your thoughts. Drop your opinion in the comments below, and let's keep the discussion respectful. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more deep dives that go beyond the headlines, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.